Hey everyone! So this video is going to be a little different than my others. This is not a review, analysis, or anything of that sort, but rather a life story I've been wanting to share for quite some time now, especially in today's climate with the stress of self-isolation. If this is something you've been struggling with lately, I highly recommend you stick around until the end of the video. As such, I won't be coming to you all today as Blackblade, but rather the real me, the face behind the channel. My name is Joshua. I'm 18 years old, soon to be 19, and I'm going to university to pursue an interest in game development. I'm an entertainment enthusiast. Whether it's a book, comic, TV show, movie, game, or even a dramatic reading of The Hobbit on cassette, because yes, I own that, being immersed in stories and exploring the meaning and intent behind the creator's vision is something I have only grown to love more and more as time goes on. Now on this channel, I've covered several games, some as just a surface level review, and others a deep dive into my opinions on every single aspect. Funnily enough, that Metal Gear Solid video was made at the time the story will be taking place. One game I have not talked about, despite now having played through all of it and acquiring multiple endings, is this one, Doki Doki Literature Club. Now for those who don't know what this game is, that's for the best actually. It's a game that's better experienced with little to no knowledge of what to expect, and in doing so, it's actually a really well made game. Part of me considered putting it on the wall of great games, but I can't in good conscience rate it that highly. The reason I'm saying all this is because I don't want the story I share here to echo any false ideas on what I think about this game. Rather, that I had a, shall we say, interesting experience with it. Alright, I'm gonna stop being around the bush and start the story. See, my life was, and arguably still is, rather easy. I have a strong love and understanding with my grandparents, who have raised me since birth, and genetics aside will always be who I see as my mother and father. I flourished in school, made many good connections, have a friend group who will likely be watching this video that I can say is better than anything else I could possibly dream up. I've accomplished a lot, and have a prospective future ahead of me. With so many great things, you'd wonder how anything could possibly be so difficult as to have made me once question the value of all of it. Well, here it is. I was, for the longest time, an exceptionally lonely being. Not the kind of lonely that sits in the back of a party and feels left out. No, I mean desolate isolation with no end in sight loneliness. It started when I was 11, and just starting middle school. Almost immediately, a group of kids began picking on me, for reasons I can't fully understand. When it reached the point where I was more than happy to pick a fight with them, for my safety and theirs, my parents took me out of public school. There, I began homeschooling, and it was alright the first year, with ample opportunities to meet with friends of mine both at and away from the house. Then, my best friend moved away, and my whole world got devastated. I used to do everything with this person, and with them no longer here, many of my social ventures suddenly had far less to offer me. I tried branching out and meeting more people, but even the people I connected with just didn't have as much to offer. My 7th and 8th grade years would prove to be strenuous in a way I never imagined. Funnily enough, this is the reason I started making videos. I was in the target demographic for a lot of up-and-coming Minecraft YouTubers, and when I learned my neighborhood friend Christian, who some of you would know as Kopitz, had been making his own videos, it wasn't long before I asked him to help me start out. I hadn't even fully realized it at the time, but the reason wasn't to follow my inspirations, get popular, or anything like that. Ultimately, I started making videos because I just wanted people to notice me. It didn't entirely work, especially after I switched from my first channel to this one, but it gave me something to do, and has become my go-to hobby, which I don't regret for a moment. Anyway, I decided to make the jump back to public school starting in 9th grade, and the first 2 years there helped drastically. That's where I became close to many of whom I consider to be my best friends today. It was a wonderful reprieve, and if it had kept up that way, I may have fully moved past the stress of loneliness being homeschooled with no trouble. Then, 2017 came. This year sucked for me, in more ways than I can even remember. The most abundant reason, though, is that my mother had to move to another state, and me and Dad would be staying for me to finish high school by graduating a year early. Through all the times I felt alone in my homeschooling, I still could see both parents regularly. Now, that was no longer an option. That final year of high school was so insane that I have many stories I could share of how it impacted me today. But the biggest factors is it's when I established the strongest, closest friendship I've ever had, it's when I learned how to face and confront real adult struggles, and it's when I first developed depression. It's a good reason I'm writing this now because it took until February of 2020 before I ever officially sought help. But the symptoms of depression I still occasionally struggle with today were first experienced at the end of 2017, when my life had gone from very safe and stress-free to juggling several complex challenges at once. The biggest challenge was, as previously stated, only living with one parent now. And as my dad would be out until past midnight, it meant I was averaging about 6 hours at a time with no human contact. 6 hours. If you take into account the average human sleeps for 8 hours, that means over a third of my waking day was complete and total isolation. It really started to get to me, and I thought it would destroy me. Thankfully, I was able to get through it all, graduate high school, and have an awesome final summer in my place of residence, creating lasting memories with everyone I considered important in my life, before quite literally moving to the next chapter. When we moved into the new home, it quickly became clear this wouldn't be as prospective as I suspected. Not only was the day we moved into our new home the same day I suffered my first, and likely ever, breakup, but we were without internet, meaning all my friends from where I lived before I couldn't reasonably communicate with. Those 10 weeks I played through more games than any other 10-week period of my life, and while it was fun, even in the moment, I realized it was just a way to distract myself from an otherwise horrifically stressful state. Once we got internet, I wasted no time getting back into making videos, chatting with friends online, and building an unhealthy addiction to the ping machine that is Discord, and making use of all the goals I had in taking a gap year. Things weren't as good as they seemed though, and not all my hope was healthy. May of 2019, I had planned to spend about 4 weeks visiting with a friend who at the time I desperately wanted to be my girlfriend. You can see where this is going. I had hoped, both foolishly and disrespectfully, that if I just waited and kept doing my best, we could be together. As if this wasn't dangerous enough for me, it turned out my dad would be moving back to our old home for a career opportunity, and once I got back from the trip, I wouldn't have him as part of the regular home environment anymore. May of 2019, for the reasons I listed and more, would prove to be a chaotic month for me, and in June, I would return home to the mentally unhealthiest living conditions I had yet experienced. If 6 hours of isolation a day wasn't dangerous enough, that summer it would jump to 12. 3/4 of my day was now devoid of any human contact, and the remaining quarter was all the same person, my mother. Her busy schedule and difference in interests meant there wasn't much we could do to connect, beyond occasionally eating dinner or watching an episode of a TV show together. Nice moments that I remember fondly, but not enough to hold back what was happening to me. I snapped, to the point where I almost lost several of my closest friends. And while I was able to recover from that, the depression and isolation that would set in after that couldn't be shaken. College was coming, and I began to grow hope for when I would start, but I had been burned too badly by the false hopes I gave myself before, and they would keep me from seeing a way out. That would only be accentuated when August came, and feelings I had been slowly developing for someone were now much harder to bury. Avery saw me as a best friend, and I saw her that way as well, though we both at this point were beginning to see each other as more. The problem? Distance. The only reason I knew her was because she had joined the group of friends I had where I used to live, and as such, while we had already started to love one another, neither of us felt we could manage a long-distance relationship. It took every ounce of willpower I had left to keep from putting hope in this friendship ever blossoming into a relationship. But I did it. Or at least, I thought I did. I'm on page 11 of writing this script, and you're probably wondering why I haven't talked about Doki Doki anymore yet. Well, there was a lot to cover, but we finally made it. You see, on and off, I had mentioned wanting to play DDLC to friends, but had never actually done so. On August 13th, 2019, I realized I had said it enough times and I needed to finally go through with it. That's when I began the game, and immediately I saw the appeal. The writing, the characters, it was all very well done. I had read and understood the warnings, but naively felt I could properly handle what would come from this game. In a way, I was right. Without spoiling anything, the material of the game it warns players about, I was prepared for. It was something else, something nobody could have predicted. That is where the trouble lay. Yuri is best girl. Nobody can change my mind. A lot about her character appealed to me for some reason, and when given the option, getting with her is the path I took. Then, it clicked why she appealed to me. She mirrored what I liked about Avery. Her body language, the way she talked, I saw so much similarity that it wasn't long before I began blending one into the other in my head. The fact that this game is a dating simulator didn't help matters, because building a connection to Yuri was like getting to live out what I had been dreaming. A day passed, and I got to that bit with that character, and experiencing that snapped me out of my delusion. I decided to hold off on playing any more of the game, especially because, even then, I knew what would come later and how it would have affected me. I saw what was happening and got myself as far away from it as I could before it further harmed my mental state. The key word here is further, because the damage was already done. The next few days had me feeling on death's door from the amount of pain and heartache I felt. There were points I couldn't even move because just understanding the situation I was in became so painful. I didn't know what to do. I panicked. Everything became a blur and I wanted to die. College was starting up, and for the freshmen, they held a conference with a motivational speaker addressing fears people had. Part of the conference involved everyone writing on a slip of paper what their greatest fear was, and it was in this moment that I realized how many fears of mine had since gone numb. I didn't care anymore if I failed in life. I didn't care if I couldn't be stable. I didn't care if I would ever be financially successful, or follow my dream, or anything like that. Only one fear of mine still scared me. A fear of dying alone. When I realized that, as soon as I had a moment, I broke down sobbing. I couldn't take it anymore. This isolate lifestyle had brought me to the brink of giving up. I realized I didn't have many more choices. And then, like a light bulb in my head, I knew what to do. I told Avery my story. I told her about playing Doki Doki, about how it affected me. I told her the point I was at emotionally, and I confessed how important she had become to me. A couple days would pass as we talked through this, her telling me the conflict she was facing as well. College classes began, and I felt, given the option, it would be better for me to not go through it alone. On Friday, August 23rd, 2019, I asked Avery if she would be willing to be my partner, under the condition that we each gave everything we could to be together and make this work. It seemed fate smiled on me that day, because she said yes. When year after year wore me down and led me to believe I would never find peace and companionship, I'd finally found someone who's determined to love me and be with me for the rest of our lives. Today is August 13th, 2020. Avery has moved in where I live to start pursuing her own college ventures. A couple months after making the move, I would go back and finish Doki Doki, with her comfort and support. The moments I dreaded before, believing if they happened it would break me, ended up taking place, but I was able to face it because this time, Avery was right there with me. Not only have I beaten this game, but my mind has finally conquered it. So, that is my story, and if you made it this far, you have my gratitude. But I still have a few more things to say. To those of you who could connect with this story, or connect with the struggles I've faced, I want you to know there's hope for you. Firstly, hold off on playing this game. It'll still be here when you're ready. Second, isolation is hard. It's a struggle in which the severity and hardship was not fully recognized until COVID-19 hit, and millions across the globe were forced to face it. If you are one of these people, I have good news for you. There is an end. In the moment, the greatest issue you will struggle with is that of maintaining your identity. As such, I advise in doing things to keep yourself busy, don't just do whatever feels good in the moment. Prioritize things that help to remind you of who you are, things you're passionate about, things you know you love. While I don't know when quarantine will completely end, I know there is a light at the end of this tunnel. Until that point, just focus on taking care of yourself and making it through the day. Why? Because you deserve it. You deserve to see each new day and the opportunities it delivers. You deserve to be happy and to live a life that brings you joy. And last, but not least, take these words to heart. You matter. You belong. You are loved. One day, you will find someone to give you comfort and strength. You will find companionship. You will find hope. And take it from me, they will be more than worth the wait. Thank you everyone for listening to my story, and take care of yourselves. When you made it, you'll be happy you did. Anyways, farewell for now, and I love you all. God bless.
Started that on the lowest of lows. This is supposed to be. I became the scared. I couldn't have anyone. I couldn't have you. That was the closest thing I have you.
I love you too.
I don't ever want to feel again. Never again.